10 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Ms. Pelosi for her kindness and giving us some time. We, Minnesota, are probably, as you expect, a little more focused on this, some of this, what we're talking about today than other places. And I want to commend the agent from Minneapolis and all the other people who are proud of the work that you do, and you folks did a great amount of work, and they're a very good piece of work on this issue. I want to thank all of you for what you do for your country. Now, having said that, I want to bring up a couple things that keep coming up. I want to try to sort through this sequence a little bit. I just heard this again today, and I wanted for the Minneapolis FBI agent to clarify this, that somebody brought up to me during the break that the flight school had called the FBI office in Minneapolis 2 or 3 times before they got a response. This has been printed before, and as I understand it, that's not the case. Are you familiar with what happened during that time
I am not at
sequence?
all aware of any prior telephone calls. I've heard that also in the past. We've been unable to confirm that in Minneapolis.
So as far as you know, the first call, right?
Yes, sir. The first call was August 15th. That happened about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And immediately following that call, the agent hung up the phone, came into my office, and the intelligence case was opened.
Right. And that's, I just wanted to get that on the record. That's as I understood it. Also, in Ms. Hill's statement today, she says that the supervisory agent in Minneapolis told the Joint Inquiry staff that the FBI headquarters had suggested that Moussaoui be put under surveillance, but the Minneapolis office didn't have enough agents to do that. It wasn't too long after this all happened that he was arrested because he was an INS violation, but is that true? Was there a decision made where they couldn't put him under surveillance because there weren't enough people? And
well, so
that raises a question of how much of a priority this was in some people's minds.
That statement is partially true. The decision on whether or not we were going to put Mr. Moussaoui under surveillance rested with me. And I made the decision that he was going to be arrested because we had a violation. The INS was participating as a full member of our Joint Terrorism Task Force. My background in the criminal arena suggests that when a violation occurs and you can stop further or potential criminal activity, you act on that. So that's exactly what I instructed the agents to do.
So the surveillance,
if we had the possibility of arresting him, we were going to arrest him. If we needed to surveil him, we certainly could have instituted a surveillance plan.
That was really never an issue.
It was not appropriate to do in this case.
Now, on this whole issue of trying to get at his theater and his effects, I understand that initially you were looking for a criminal search warrant. Is that?
The initial telephone call I made to the Radical Fundamentalist Unit was to request a notification to the Department of Justice's Office of Intelligence Policy Review to grant us concurrence to walk across the street to the United States Attorney's Office and discuss the possibility of a criminal warrant. That was not to say that we were committed to getting a criminal warrant because, as the FBI headquarters agent has mentioned, the feeling of FBI headquarters was we had not yet reached the threshold of probable cause to obtain a criminal warrant. I don't disagree with that assessment. And when the information came to light that we would be better suited to pursue the FISA warrant because it granted us greater options or a larger number of options in the future, it was very clear that that was the right decision, was to pursue it as a FISA matter. And that's the way we went.
And
now,
there was some concern about that if you went through the criminal process and were turned down, that it would jeopardize your FISA request too, as I understand it.
yes, sir.
Now, we've got some indication that there, and I guess this was asked earlier, that there was some kind of adversarial relationship between Minneapolis and headquarters, that there had been some issues before in these areas, and apparently both of you gentlemen weren't there long enough to be aware of that. Mr. Rollins, do you know would that have been a factor in all of this? And we also have the reprimand that Collin Raleigh talked about. Was there some kind of problem between Minneapolis and headquarters that affected this?
Sorry for stepping on your question. No, it absolutely should not have been a factor. If there had been a prior disagreement between the supervisor and my colleague's unit and any agent in Minneapolis, it certainly had not been raised with management within the International Terror Operations Section. prior to that. So I would take it to mean that if there was some issue, it wasn't very significant because nobody brought it to anyone's attention to do anything about it. The second part of your question, I think it's important to understand that you don't want 11,000 agents in the FBI picking up the phone, calling back to CIA or INS or State Department or any other headquarters in Washington with their leads. There's a rational, logical reason why leads come into headquarters. There's a headquarters-to-headquarters dialogue, and the answer goes back out. In this instance, at that time, there was a memorandum of understanding between the FBI and the CIA that is exactly how we would handle inquiries from the field. It's more effective, it's more efficient, and it's the way our counterparts in Washington want it to work.
There's also some information that the headquarters didn't think that the people in Minneapolis understood the FISA process, and the people in Minneapolis were very frustrated, I think, in the way this whole, they really were frantic to try to get at this stuff. How are people in the field trained on FISA? Are they only trained at Quantico, or do they get updated by on court decisions and legal changes? You know, do you, an agent in the field, are you trained on this at all?
I had received no training on the FISA process prior to this incident. My background had been as a domestic terrorism investigator, and I had received some fairly extensive training on the Attorney General guidelines and matters related to domestic terrorism. FISA problem, or the FISA Act, is not often, if ever, invoked in domestic terrorism matters. So personally, I had not had any. However, there were other agents on my squad, the agent who was assigned as the case agent in this matter, and an agent who was assigned to the parallel criminal case post-September 11th, who had received some in-service training from Quantico, in addition to the on-the-job training and training from the supervisor that preceded me in how to handle the FISA matters. So there was an understanding of the FISA process in Minneapolis by this specific case agent, as evidenced by the fact that this case agent had a couple of prior FISAs and had been through the process before.
Sir, if I could address that issue as well. I've been working counterterrorism matters for approximately 13 years, and during the course of my career, I've been to several in-services at Quantico that give us updated training on the FISA process, how to put together the packages, what's needed to make them successful. Most recently, I was at a FISA in-service just right after 9/11, where we addressed some FISA issues as well. So I have had the benefit of having that training, and the training is available and has been put on by our National Security Law Unit.
I know there was a lot of frustration in the Minneapolis office. I stopped by there shortly after 9/11 and so forth. Was there ever any attempt by anybody in Minneapolis to go above the radical fundamentalist unit, to try to jump over them and try to get somebody at a higher level to listen to what you were talking about?
I took the information, as I mentioned earlier, to my immediate supervisor, who was an assistant special agent in charge. He also happened to be acting as the special agent in charge of the office. So there were some internal concerns or really some demographic things that were happening within the Minneapolis office at the time this matter was underway. We did not have a special agent in charge of the office, so we had an acting special agent in charge acting in his stead, or her stead. We did not have a full-time supervisor on this squad. I was acting as the supervisor in the absence of someone who had recently been promoted. So the networks that are established by those management personnel that are normally in those key positions would definitely have come to play, or could have come to play, had the circumstances been a little bit different. When I took the information up to my assistant special agent in charge, I provided him with a list of the names of the people who were supervising the radical fundamentalist unit, and in fact the people who were supervising the international terrorism operations section. I'm unprepared to speak to you today as to why those telephone calls were not made. I requested that they would be made.
If I could add to that also, as the chief of the unit at the time, I want it very clear, probably in my own defense here, that I was not made aware of the issues in terms of Minneapolis's frustration with regard to this process. I think that clearly there was some miscommunication. I think some of the frustration was driven by that miscommunication, and obviously in hindsight, I very much would have wanted a phone call, and unfortunately that did not take place.
If I could take just 30 seconds on that, because I think it's critical to understand that on a regular basis, field offices around the country, SACs, visit the office, they're on the fax, they're on the phone, they're on the email. It's a regular occurrence to lobby for your FISA, to get it moved up in terms of priority, or to make an appointment with OIPR to debate the issues and the merits of your FISA. And that's something, as you look for things you can do better, we clearly in the FBI are looking for things that we can do better, and encouraging that dialogue is certainly one of them. We should not have chief division counsels who are peripheral to an issue where you're desperate. The chief division counsel in all 56 field offices, and this is a problem we've identified from years ago, needs to be a player within the FISA realm. Their forte, their expertise for years has been Title III. There's been a reluctance to jump on and get educated and be part of this process. Instead, they defer to NSLU, which overburdens the people at headquarters. So it's something that the Bureau's recognized, and we need to continually promote, and it has to happen in order to make it a more effective system.